Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, whether you're in India or abroad, wherever else you are uh, listening to this webinar. I'm really happy that we all could make time for this. Many thanks. Um, just a quick round of introduction. I am the MC for today's webinar. My name is Sanjay Khan Nagra. I'm a partner in Khaitan and Company. I primarily focus on venture capital, technology, and corporate M&A work. Tech M&A is a focus area for me. And today's session. And by the way, before we begin, a small note of disclaimer. And because my practice revolves around tech M&A, AI and its impact on M&A is something that's been very close to my personal practice and as a firm as well. We thought that we will undertake a special session on this as part of our M&A master series. Today's webinar is designed to make sure that there is a sophisticated way of understanding how AI is going to impact M&A, how it is already impacting M&A. There are many ways in which AI is expected to impact M&A process going forward. There is already a lot of impact of AI on the innate value of companies, whether it is an upside increase in valuations because companies are using AI well. Many AI native companies are coming up and have come up, and their valuations have of course been good. And then there are other set of companies where AI has had a negative impact because of AI, a lot of processes, a lot of functions that those companies were undertaking could not be undertaken by them, but by some other companies much better. The third piece is to make sure that the entire uh, uncharted territories within an M&A. For instance, in negotiations and in certain other aspects where technology has not found its way until now. Technology has found its way in many ways of M&A process, in many aspects of M&A process, but some core matters of M&A processes are still something that are away from the impact of technology to a great extent, and we will discuss some of those aspects as well. With me on this webinar today, I'm quite fortunate to have a panel which is as diverse and as knowledgeable as this one. I have with me Prasanna. Prasanna is the managing partner at Upeka. Upeka is India's leading B2B SaaS and AI accelerator. Prasanna has spent 20 years in the startup ecosystem. He's a full stack growth driver. He advises companies and he works with them during their uh, from idea stage to late stages, and many of those are currently working on AI based products. We also have with us Sahil Zaman. Prasanna is based out of Bangalore. Sahil, based out of Ontario in Canada, is a founder of a company called Closing Folders. Closing Folders is a company that was based on usage of technology in an M&A or a fundraise or any transactional closing process. It was so successful that it was used by 100% of large Canadian law firms and over 20% of large US law firms. In 2020, Closing Folders was actually acquired by iManage, which is the largest player in the world in legal document management space. And then Sahil continued with the iManage for 3 years after 2020, and currently he's on a break. Sahil is also a lawyer. After his bachelor's, he undertook Juris Doctor, and he was called to the bar in Ontario. Then we have Vardhan. Vardhan is based out of Bangalore. Vardhan is the legal head of Premji Invest, which is India's one of India's largest private equity funds. In his role at Premji Invest, he oversees a lot of different transactions, right from listed M&A space to large fundraisers to startup investments and other matters. And one unique part about Vardhan is that in apart from his transactional role, he has also spent time implementing an AI project, an AI process within the Premji Invest ecosystem, technology enthusiasts within the ecosystem, and that we'll hear more about that product and what challenges were there and what learnings can be implemented by others using what they underwent. Then finally we have Varun is sitting in Singapore, and he leads a digital and tech investment banking team at Avendus. He's in Singapore leading Avendus Singapore, and he has more than 15 years of experience. He has led over 35 M&A transactions, both growth stage and others. And we will learn from Varun from his plethora of M&A experience, both from the process part of it and pre-process where identification of a target, valuing a target, how do you look at what important metrics is in ensuring whether and just to implement some of those learnings for us, how AI has impacted all of those aspects around discovery of target, evaluating a good target, undergoing a transaction process, and post closing, what matters can AI play a part in, such as upside and downside adjustments and many other things. So with that, with that introduction out of the way, uh, I'll move on to my first segment. And first segment is really, I think there are audience folks in the audience who are probably like me, not from tech background and therefore not really aware of how AI is going to impact our everyday life, particularly people who are involved in M&As, whether they are on the legal side or commercial side, or any ancillary aspect of M&A. But before that, and I wanted to start with Sahil on this. Uh, Sahil, maybe just to understand what is this AI people keep talking about, right? Is it so there is LLM, there is generative AI, and now what is going to be seen as impact of that AI? Should people really be using AI in everything they do? Should AI be used at all in certain aspects of, say, an M&A or transactions, etc.? So maybe just an overview of what we should know about AI before we jump into this discussion about AI's impact on M&A.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't use AI at all. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I think it's very important to talk about what AI is, because I think we've been talking about AI for decades, right? And I think uh, any sufficiently advanced technology can be considered AI for its time, and then later people are like, oh, that's not AI. Like this is the new AI thing, right? So and I can give you a few examples, right? So um, when we started closing folders, it was a transactional tool, but we didn't consider ourselves an AI company, right? So sometimes, and I think there might be some lessons here, perhaps. Uh, like most of it was just what people would call algorithms, right? So if this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this happens, right? But then there's some times where just pure algorithms either would be too cumbersome to code, or we just didn't know all the use cases. So in one of the use cases was people would upload tons of documents, and they would have to match them to a closing checklist. Okay, so a closing checklist might have items like letter of intent, NDA, share purchase agreement, officer certificate, so on. And then you'd upload tons of documents. There'd be different versions of these documents, or signature pages to these documents, or schedules to these documents. So we'd have to figure out very quickly, in a very lightweight way, where do these documents belong. So we used what is not considered AI now, but was considered AI back then, which is fuzzy logic, right? So it's just like, okay, here are some elements of text or title or document name that we have here. Here we have a closing checklist with some document names. It doesn't match exactly, but can it match, right? So we didn't train the computer to do that. Like the computer was kind of like, okay, like here are some matches. I have some high degree of confidence. Let's do that. The distinction between what we consider AI now and that is that it was completely deterministic, right? So every single time you threw in a document at it, it would make the same prediction. Whether it was right or wrong, it would make the same prediction. And that made it a little bit easier to write tests for, to troubleshoot, to customize for clients. Um, then we got into another situation where we had to look at, okay, you uploaded these documents. which are the signature pages in these documents and who's signing it. Okay, like if Varun signing one document, well, one page, Sanjay signing another page, Sal signing another page. How do you do that? So we used a technology called CNNs, which is now I think still kind of close to AI, which is convolutional neural nets. We don't have to get into like all the details, but it would kind of go over the page. But the distinction there was like we just trained the system. It was a complete black box. Like we didn't know what it was doing. We didn't know how it was doing it. We just trained it and trained it and trained it until we got about 95% accuracy, and we could say, okay, like this is pretty good. That was like machine learning. Like the machine learned by itself and it figured it out, right? So now what we're getting to is again, I would say that was pretty deterministic, right? Or it was deterministic. Sorry, it's not pretty. It's like being kind of pregnant. You're either you're either deterministic or you're not. So it was deterministic. Every single time you threw the same signature pages at it, it would have the same prediction. Okay, unless you trained it further. But now what we're getting to is transformers, generative pre-trained transformers, LLMs. This is non-deterministic technology, right? So it's an even bigger black box where you throw information at it, it gives you some output. But if you throw that exactly the same information at it again, it will give you a completely different output. So it's in some ways it's kind of completely breaking the paradigm. Like up until now, computers have been deterministic, and all of a sudden they're not. So that's kind of what we're meaning by AI in this context, right? Generative large language model AI. Um, the
Just to stop you there, by
Sure.
deterministic, you mean you know how it is reaching where it is reaching. There is no black box in between, or
Well, sometimes, as I was saying, sometimes you don't know exactly know why, how it's reaching, what it's reaching, but it will reach the same destination given the same inputs every single time. Now that's
if you
not the
give
case.
the same input, you'll always get the same output.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and
Yeah.
Gen
But
AI
now that's
changes
not the
that.
case. And I think that changes a lot of things, right? Because in law, especially, and in a lot of fields, 95% right, 99% right is not right enough. Like you have to be 100% right. So if a computer is going to change its mind every single time you give it an input, now you need other methods of human intervention to figure that out. And it might still be very, very useful. But to your question, should we use it for all use cases? Like, well, you have to be pretty careful about using this type of model, right, to all those use cases. The If I may just give one more example, is that last example that I gave of the signature page generation model. There's good and bad to it, right? So we just all we had to do was give it tons of examples and it kind of figured it out by itself. But when I say it was like 95% accurate, what it was is like 90% of the time or 95% of the time it was accurate 100% of the time, right? But 5% of the time it was not accurate at all. Like it was complete hot garbage every single time, right? And that makes it very hard. Like just speaking from a commercial perspective, if you are pitching to a client and their signature pages are all like weird and wonderful signature pages and none of them work, it's like how they're never going to use your platform. Like how can you in good conscience sell this to them, right? And so there's been a lot of talk. It's like maybe we should go back to algorithms and a deterministic model so that if it doesn't work, we can say, hey, big enterprise client that's going to pay us a ton of money, we can figure this out for you by writing algorithms on top of all our AI stuff, right? So we can get into the more of that later, but there's commercial implications of using AI as well.
Absolutely. By the way, on that, different outputs when you give same input at different points in time or different AI software or to the same software, um, different lawyers will give you different answers on same set of facts and same set of law. And
Yeah.
we'll come to that in a bit. I'll quickly move on to Vardhan. Thank you for that introduction. For people like me, Sahil, it made us understand better what the tech is at least. Vardhan, quickly on the transaction side, right, and particularly on legal aspects of a transaction, there are many things, right, from set, forget setting up data room. Even before that, you do an NDA, you do a term sheet, and then there is a data room setup, then diligence starts, and then parallel work stream start in a transaction, and then close signing, closing, post closing. You have had the benefit of not only doing this day in day out, but also implementing, and to the extent you are able to share with all of us for our learning, something internally in terms of an AI software to help you with some of these aspects. Which aspects do you think in a transaction one can and should make the use of AI, and what you are seeing in your practice and what you have seen as products in the market? And secondly, how what are the challenges as an organization, since you have implemented something like this? As an organization, what challenges have you come across from which people can learn? And anything else, Vardhan, you have with us to share? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Sanjay, and thanks, Hal. I mean, that was really helpful. In fact, we had enrolled for one of the courses. In our CIO has put an obligation or sort of a requirement that every certain level of designation above needs to take a preliminary course on AI, and that was the first thing they discussed: what is machine learning and what is AI. And so that was really interesting that you summarized it, Sanjay. The way kind of I would look at AI or machine learning within that is better decisions and doing it cheaper. If something helps us arrive at a decision, distill data into a decision, or distill data in a manner that helps us make a decision, better decision, and makes us do it faster slash cheaper, that is what we would kind of look at in our transactions as an technology which typically is using AI in that sense. Before we get into transactions, I would say that I would just kind of introduce what I think Varun is also looking at, which is that it can start from deal sourcing, right? Where you look at various data sets to identify what are the kind of targets that make sense for you. How do you kind of engage with them? It can do lead generation for you. So that is a whole M&A piece, which is pre-term sheet also. It could be used in thesis writing, like where you kind of prepare a thesis for a segment and that the kind of scale and the data that it can capture in almost no time in that sense, right? So you kind of use that as a plugin to do it cheaper and faster to immediately decide, okay, is this making sense or is exciting or not, right? Coming to what I largely deal with, it starts from NDAs, right? And as we speak, we have the beta version, we are working on it, we are trying to come up with a tool which can completely decentralize NDAs from the legal team, right? So it does not hit our desks. It goes only to the investment team and they close it. And what we do is we train the algorithm that these are the six things that we believe in NDAs are variables, and these six is what this is a gold standard, and you can perhaps dilute it to a silver standard, and within this go ahead and do what you like, right? And you kind of give it will also prompt you with drafting, which we've already populated in it, right? And so that is kind of a NDA negotiation tool, you could say, very basic form of AI in that sense that we use. So it could be negotiation of documents, right? So and if it works on an NDA, it can work on an SPA. Theoretically, if you can have a prototype, it can work on an SSA, it can work on an SHA, it can work on any document, right? So their prototypes are there. Of course, to scale it at that level will take time, where it kind of gives you, let's say you throw a SHA into it and there are 20 things that you kind of populate and say that these are the things that we certainly don't accept, and it kind of will give you a marker saying that okay, these are the first level no goes for you, for instance, right? So there is better negotiation, there is better research also, right? So you could have it in, let's say I want to understand what is best efforts in Indian law when a promoter or a company says that they're going to give us an exit at best efforts, right? Today, or typically how it was done is I would go to a law firm, I would mandate them, get a memo from them. It would be a 6-page memo. It would tell me, the full kind of evolution of law or how that happened. But and while that is good and that is thorough, what I sometimes want is just a quick sense check: is this sufficient or not for me, right? And that I think this can help you get there within a matter of minutes, where it has that access and it kind of gives you an output which is 95%, 90% correct. Um, so negotiations, again within documents, the one is negotiation, one is research, the third is of course generating documents, and even that is possible, though that I would leave it to Sahil how he wants to kind of technically define that. I would not say that that's directly document generation is not really AI. If you are kind of prompting it in the form of a questionnaire and it out pops a term sheet, but that would be the first step towards it kind of leading to a system where, let's say, we just put in the commercial and it tells you, okay, this is the term sheet which is most, kind of suitable for you, given the funds or your risk appetite that it understands after having seen every term sheet that the fund has ever signed, for instance, right? So that, I would say, is largely, and all of this, I believe, is the prototype. It Proof of concept exists today. It is just that and we'll come to that later perhaps, is that how to make this into a absolutely reliable, because the stakes are high, right? Absolutely reliable, consumable technology, which is part of your day to day functioning, right? Like a DV Compare or a Microsoft Word or whatever else it is. And that is just a matter of time, I think, where it will get. So I think that, I would say, is how, where we are, in terms of how far we've gone into AI and where we see it headed on the doc side. One more thing that we did, and which required a fair amount of time, was AI is also stands for aggregating information. So we just have a bot where you kind of just ask a question on a on a transaction, right? Do I have board seat in X company? How many board seats am I entitled to have? It'll tell you. If can I do a, if the company is doing an M&A of 100 million, do they need my veto, right? Do they need my affirmative? Uh, do I have a right to block it? It'll tell you. It'll tell you. So anything like, what's the indemnity cap for XYZ? Is there a specific indemnity for ABC? It will tell you. So, and I imagine these are just incremental things. It just changes a very small way of the way you function, but it actually kind of can make you really nimble and fast. And when you aggregate it over a period of a year, and different people doing it, and once you know that it is 95% accurate, it just is an great convenience, and really can change things, change the way you do things.
Super exciting, Vardhan. Also, I think it is a good reminder to everybody else who's on the webinar as to how quickly things have moved from figuring out board seats, affirmative rights, what actions you can block, you can't block, etc. Which would require at least 1.5 days time for people to sift through documents. Not very long ago, like at least 3-4 months back, everybody was just doing that. And in 3-4 months, if the world has moved to this, we can only imagine where it will be in 3-4 years from now. Varun, coming to you quickly on three parts. One is target identification that Vardhan briefly alluded to, valuation, determination, in the sense, figuring out how to, there are various parameters that go into valuing a company, right? And a lot of it is not pure science. Any of those areas where you've seen any practical application of AI, identification, valuation, and then, of course, the non-legal, we have spent some time discussing the documentation, negotiation, and many things. On the non-legal side of things, which includes, doing diligence on the financial side. Legal diligence is a lot more text heavy. Financial diligence is a lot more numbers heavy, and maybe there are other aspects that you can educate us on. How do you see that changing? Has that changed already? Or what are your thoughts, Varun?
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjay. I think so. Sanjay, when you actually invited for this topic, I thought it's quite intriguing because, when we deal a lot with companies which are in the tech space, and therefore companies which are either getting disrupted or disrupting using AI. But it's an interesting topic because it sort of also pushes us to go back and think about, while you're dealing with a lot of client situations, you don't necessarily always keep thinking about how AI could impact your own processes. So thanks for that. So actually, I sort of, when we started discussing about this topic for this webinar, went about, looked around. Sometimes you use AI and you don't realize which are the applications you're already using AI in, right? It was surprising, pleasantly surprising, because what I could see is, when you sort of look at the entire fundraising slash M&A process, and you sort of break it down into different steps. Interestingly, there are tools coming up in each and every step, right? So therefore, So therefore, there are founders like Sahil who've already started thinking about developing tools for different steps, right? So maybe, starting with what Vardhan alluded to, which is lead generation or deal sourcing, and that typically starts with essentially sort of reaching out to companies or reaching out to targets. So you will find certain AI tools there. One of the tools which I've really liked in the last few months is essentially a simple tool which gets integrated into Zoom conversations, right? And the reason I really found it interesting is 12 months back when I first saw a tool like that, it was a simple transcription of a conversation. But the tool has evolved so quickly into an efficient tool which is actually giving us amazing summary of what were the key takeaways of that meeting, what are the follow-up actions, which are the companies you need to focus on, and then there is a transcript, right? So from the lead generation standpoint, one of this. Second is essentially, on the target identification or buyer search, we find certain tools there. We also find tools from a valuation standpoint where a lot of work which goes into valuations is essentially identifying the right comps. And sometimes while on the outside it might look to be a very simple exercise, sometimes it could take 1 day, 2 day, 3 days to just get the right comps. And often you come across companies where you don't have the right comp set, right? You don't have a company, especially in our field we come across this quite often, that you don't have a company which is comparable to a certain company anywhere in the world. So there are companies which are actually building tools only for actually identifying the right comp set. Similarly, even when you look at the other core activities of deal making, which is either you're actually creating a financial model or you're actually creating a pitch book. So there are interesting tools which have also come into existence. For example, there's a tool which sort of integrates with an Excel and helps in making the financial modeling easier than it used to be earlier. Instead of someone trying to figure out their own formula of how an Excel would work, essentially tools which are making that process much easier. Similarly, when it comes to pitch books, there are tools where you can actually feed in the story, and that tool will actually give you an output in terms of what a potential presentation could look like. Having said that, what I would say is, except for few areas, I would still say that the adoption still continues to be a bit limited, primarily for two reasons. One is the awareness. Maybe the legal part of the process is an exception, where I see generally the awareness is much higher. But outside of that, I would say that awareness is generally a little low, generally low. And second part, I would also think that most of these tools still need to evolve a lot. Just going back to what Vardhan was saying, that when you have an AI tool, it needs to be reliable for you to be able to make use of that. I think these tools will probably take a few months to a few quarters to get to a stage where at least a human will be able to use it as a machine. At least the tool needs to be a stage to get to a point where at least a human with his skill should be able to use it, uh, get to better outcomes, get to faster outcomes, be able to do more comprehensive research in many areas. I wouldn't think they are there yet, but like just going back to the first example I took, in a 12-month span, I've just seen those models can evolve so quickly and learn so quickly that we can start seeing this change very, very quickly.
Interesting point you made on awareness versus adoption, because uh, because in legal, since you mentioned, Varun, that there is more awareness. Yes, there is. Everybody's talking about legal, but I see legal being the least in adoption across, right? And for instance, and that's historically been the case. And now I see lawyers asking, how can I use it? Is it going to take away jobs? Is it is it going to make processes redundant, etc.? But interestingly, we also we have a chief digital officer, and he led a team and launched an in-house AI product. It's called Ask Khetan AI. It's a chat plus a product where you can upload documents. And I was amazed to see reactions of people when they uploaded, because in a closed atmosphere you can upload real-time documents. You can, because it's all safe and secure internally, people are more open to test the technology, and reactions were amazing, because summaries are coming absolutely clean, and you can ask questions like board seats and this and that, which on this particular point of law, what views have been taken. It's amazing. Before I move on to Prasanna, Vardhan, you had raised your hand. Did you have any point to add?
Yeah, so Varun mentioned something really interesting, and don't want to take much time, but something like a smart contracts, right? Like a typical M&A document can have different things where rights change when something changes. Like my conversion ratio can change if something doesn't happen or if the company doesn't perform a certain way. Different things, right? Now I know that the technology is there. In a prototype thing, you can build something where it can actually synthesize it and convert it into a deliverable. Like Varun was saying, that it actually speaks to the Excel and comes out with something which is like a deliverable or or a task, right? It distills it into a task. Let's say it's even filing a application with the regulator, right? Just that, not just a reminder for condition subsequent or precedent. Little more than that. I think we are there as well. So a lot can happen there, and yeah, like Varun says, that it maybe it's a few quarters or some time away, but that also is something that we can see will happen.
Prasanna, I have the perfect question from the audience to for me to moving to you. The question is, and this is from Annette.
Sure.
From Annette is asking, are we talking about one technology solution that can accommodate all these functions, or are these covered by different solution providers? Because as Varun, Vardhan, and Sahil were speaking about different AI tools for contracts and summaries, is that I could think of companies within the OPEC fold that this company is doing this company has already done this. Uh, is there one that is doing all of it? Please tell us. And also please tell us which ones are the more easy problems to solve for organizations, because in your journey with various companies, both from the accelerator side and otherwise also in the ecosystem, you would be coming across companies in variety of fields who are adopting this technology in some form or shape. What are the key challenges that you see them facing? Are there any issues that they need to sort out before getting into evaluating products or implementing products, etc.? Are there any products which are more suitable for for processes like these? And lastly, so on the technology itself where Sahil started, do you have anything more to add on how should one view this tech?
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the last one first, because that way I can kind of pull in the other things there, right? So I think, if we kind of look at what is the legal process in some way, shape, or form. Somebody says, hey, there is a business case. This is what we want the agreement for. And then you or somebody else says, hey, this is XYZ documents have what we need, and then we need additionally some delta on top of that. These three clauses should cover this. You will give it to a junior lawyer. They will go try to make sense of all of this stuff. They will put it all together, and then once they do it, they'll come back to you, give you a draft. You look at it. Between the two of you, you have some context about the business. The junior lawyer probably has less context about the business. And then you are looking at it and you're running some edge cases in your mind. What happens if this happens? Does the contract cover that? What happens if this happens? Does the contract cover that? What happens in that case? And so on and so forth. And then you fix all that. Then you send it back to the business user. And if the business user is anything like me, I can't understand head or tail of the legal document that you said. So I'm going to say, hey, okay, these are two business cases. Can you please tell me in plain English what will happen if these things happen, right? Because I think that 90% of the time, these are two things that are going to happen. And then you're going to look at it and say, okay, in this case, if this happens, this is what is going to happen. In this case, if this happens, this is what's going to happen. That might be in the form of an Excel sheet, or you might share it with me, and so on and so forth. But this is like broadly the process of how things happen, right? Now, what is happening with AI is that with the current state of AI, it's like you have some smart fourth standard kids or sixth standard kids who have some degree of context, and you can have many of them, right? So now one of the things that's happening is that people are looking at bits and pieces of the current day process that you have and thinking, hey, which part of that process
Can I change or do better or do differently, right? But if I were to do this, and if you want to use AI effectively, that's not how you should go about it. Instead, you should actually reimagine that earlier time of these folks, you or the junior lawyer, that was the most critical thing. That was a least available resource, right? But if you have somebody who's intelligent and you have many of them, then you would really do stuff in a different way. So, for example, what I would think about how this whole thing would evolve would be that you would have, when you take these business requirements, the AI already has context of all the old legal documents for that firm, for that customer, and from your firm. And therefore, the value that you add as Sanjay is primarily the edge cases that you have in your head, because the customer, as a customer, I would say, man, these are the only two cases I care about. And you would say, no, 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 you got to care about these other 98 cases as well. Of course, these are the two things that will happen 99% of the time, but all these other things you have to care about, and I can explain to you why. But you're going to explain that in 15 minutes. But you're going to say, hey, take all these things and put it together. And then there's going to be an agent approach where there are different types of agents of the same AI or different AIs. So, for example, one of the AIs could be instructed to say, hey, for this kind of contract, what are the clauses that affected a court case at some point, or had some precedent of being used at some point? Can we make sure we are covering all of them? Then you might have a different agent which is stitching all of these documents together to make one document. Then you might have a different agent which is basically red teaming this document and saying, hey, these are all the cases that could happen. These are attack kind of a cases, things that you would not expect to happen, and so on and so forth. You could have another agent which is preparing a response for each of those cases, saying, if this happens, what happens according to the agreement? If this happens, what happens according to the agreement? If this happens, what happens to the agreement, right? And then you could have another agent which is looking at that and saying, hey, what all changes do we need to make in the document if we need to fix these things? And then another agent which is basically saying, now I'll translate all of this into English so that the business user can understand and say, this is important for us, this is not important for us, and so on and so forth, right? So imagine that there is a kind of a many agent, infinite number of agents working for you. They're not like super smart, they don't know everything, but they know all your documents, which is more than your junior lawyer might. They know all the precedent, which is obviously none of us can know. They are up to date 24/7, which is like practically impossible for us. And therefore, what all you can do with them, and then present that to the business user, saying, look, these are the business cases. According to this agreement, these will be the outcomes. Which of these do you want? Which of these do you not want? And then be able to translate that into a more, useful document for the end user, and a more comprehensible document for the end user. That is the kind of flip that has to happen from a process perspective. Because if you just take the current process as is and try to augment it a little bit with AI here and there and stuff, you're not actually making good use of the technology, right? So that's kind of a high level of
Therefore,
how I think
no, no,
the
absolutely,
process
Ketan,
has
and
to
therefore,
change.
yeah, and I think my takeaway from this is therefore the instead of replacing one process here, etc., or changing one part of it, or two parts of it, or three parts, one is to reimagine the entire thing. You have to
Exactly.
redraw the entire Venn diagram and figure out how does it in early days before the, even the tech that we use today became mainstream. Lawyers used to have one personal assistant, one junior
Right.
lawyer, intern, etc. Used to be a really large chamber, and the senior lawyer would just keep telling each one of them what to
Right.
do on the admin side, what to do on, and what to get for him to review, etc. And I think what you are alluding to is that consider that you are surrounded by hundreds of them at
Yes.
your beck and call. By the way, an interesting piece on UI UX, and I'll come back to it in the second round. How, because currently people think of AI, people think that you just input something in chat and something will come up,
Right.
but it could be voice, it could be visuals, it could be many other things.
Exactly.
I will come back to that. And Sahil, on firstly a reflection on anything that's been discussed after you last spoke. Second,
Mm.
uh, on the on the on before implement, because you've seen the life cycle of many firms and many companies also undergoing this. Any any preparedness that one has to undergo, and given what the technology that we are going to get 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line, what should how should companies be thinking of evaluating themselves today and then preparing for the final adoption or evaluation of products that are available?
Yeah, I think kind of dovetailing off what my fellow panelists have said, like it's easy to kind of get overwhelmed with like all the potential that's out there and all the hype cycle and all that stuff, right? But I mean, if you focus or just laser focus on the outcomes that you want, right? So I think all of my panelists have kind of talked about like what outcomes that they wanted to see and like how they were going about it. I think that's really important, right? Like forget about the technology like completely, which sounds crazy to say from a guy who used to sell technology. Is just forget about the technology. What is the state of the world that you want, and then what is the best way to get there, right? So as Vardhan had mentioned, like in some cases, like you're generating a document, like does it really matter if you're using document templating or you're using some sort of like pre-trained transformer or large language model or whatever? Like, does it really matter? Like, as long as you get where you want and you get the business outcome that you want, it kind of doesn't matter what the technology is, right? Of course, like when you're actually implementing it, it does matter. But so think about what the business outcome is. What is the end state of the world that you want first? And I think it's easy to say, okay, well, everyone has their own thing, right? Like, oh, I want to make more money. I want to increase conversion rates. I want to increase my EBITDA margins. I want to like close more deals, whatever it is. But like, can your entire organization agree to it, right? Like, it's very easy for one person or one organization to have one priority, but then if everyone has their own priority, then nobody has a priority, right? So that would be the number one thing I would say. So I don't know if you're expecting like a techie answer for that, but really like you got to do the hard work on what you actually want and figure that out, and then everything else, the technology will fall into place.
And maybe also getting your data in one place, figuring out what you want to do with that data, and in terms of processes, which processes do you want to attack first, and where you want to go later.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, that's the more operational answer is like, yeah, definitely get your data in order. Like it never hurts, right? But the thing is, like, you can spend unlimited time on fixing up your data without really knowing what you actually want to do with it. So there's a bit of a kind of balance that you need to have.
yeah,
Your data is never
yeah.
going to be perfect. I'm
Uh,
sorry to say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Varun, are people throwing in AI just for the sake of increase in valuation? How do you how do you call out the bluff? Like what's happening? Everybody's saying that, oh, I will go and say that I'm the lawyer who uses the AI most. Will I be paid the most?
You're putting me in docs, Sanjay. I'm a conflicted party here. No, but it's a good question. I was not expecting this, but it's a good question. I would say, you know, uh, generally AI is attracting more interest, right? AI is in the momentum, right? And therefore, it's quite common for us to sort of uh, pick whatever is in the theme in the momentum at that point and present that side of a business. So I'll say, and when you look at businesses where there isn't a component of AI, either there could be businesses where AI is like the core, where it's primarily an AI driven business, and that's like pretty straightforward, right? It is actually an investment which somebody like Prasanna may be interested in doing, right? But then there are also businesses where AI is somewhere at the periphery, right? AI is an enabler. So when you see in markets like this, when there is a lot more interest in AI, you will see bankers like us sort of being more aggressive in positioning or bringing out the AI aspects of the business, in not only generating more interest in an asset, but also to drive up valuations. So to that extent, wherever there is an AI potential or there is some degree of AI which is helping companies, definitely yes.
In fact, it also goes to one important point that people who are in any business today, if they are looking at external capital or finally getting acquired, in both cases of fundraise as well as M&A, they need to make sure that they are optimizing AI to the extent they can, right? Because if tomorrow somebody comes looking at them and says that, look, guys, your processes are, some of these processes can be very easily done. Why have you not adopted so far? That will definitely have a negative impact if not the other way, right? And then there are basic businesses which we keep hearing about where the impact of AI is so fundamental that they are just not the same businesses anymore, right?
No, actually, that's a very good point, Sanjay. So I'll break this into two parts, right? And again, there are businesses which are directly benefiting or directly getting disrupted by AI. To give you a few on the disruption side, to give you a few examples, right? So one of the tech companies, which was again, global player, listed in US, they lost almost 85% market cap after generative AI came into being. Okay, because most of the tools they had were primarily could be very very easily disrupted by AI tools, right? So that's one example. Another example is one of the center companies, which is again one of the largest in the world. They've lost almost 60% market cap in last 18 months. There has been no impact on their revenue. In fact, they've continued to grow. Their margins have continued to expand, but there is a fear that a large part of their business will start getting disrupted by AI. They've seen some recovery of stock once they started saying that we are also implementing AI, and we are not necessarily going to be that impacted, but still they are still 55-60% down in terms of their market cap, right? Another example would be one of the largest media companies in the world has again lost about 20% sort of a market cap, and primarily because some part of what they do, which is low end artwork, is again being threatened by some AI tools, right? So while you see this on one hand where low skill white collar jobs are getting disrupted by AI today, and I'm sure as AI will develop, it will keep going up the ladder and start disrupting more and more skillful roles at some point as well. But as of today, wherever there could be white collar skill low skill jobs getting disrupted, they are seeing an impact on of AI. Having said that, Sanjay, to your question, broadly, there are many businesses that we represent, right? So, as an example, if we are doing a deal for a financial services firm, which essentially is going to get valued based on how good their underwriting is, what are their NPA levels, how good is their distribution. I don't think AI is impacting those businesses yet, right? Similarly, if you're actually doing a deal for a consumer coffee company, and again, it's similarly, how good is the brand, what are the good tastes, are they able to sort of keep up to the market? Those are the things which are still driving valuations for these companies. Having said that, in the next 2 3 years, it will be important for them to keep up with technology. So while it's not impacting any M&A or valuations or interest in those assets today, in next 3 years 4 years, if some of their competitors will start using AI better to drive some of that decision making better, to understand those customer preferences better, or to underwrite better, then these companies will also start seeing an impact. And therefore, it's imperative for all of these companies to keep up, although they may not be seeing an impact just yet when you look at the broader M&A or fundraising, except like I said, for few sectors where there is a direct impact.
Got it. Got it. A bunch of questions coming up, asking on the regulatory side what legislations are required for surveillance and use of data. I think that's a more data privacy and use of data for AI purposes. India is coming out with a whole set of laws after DPDP focused on AI, and I think a topic for another discussion. Who is an AI prompt engineer in legal, and whether there are any how are these jobs? I think I'll come to you, Prasanna, with that question later. Uh, and one question on tool hallucination, which I'll come to both Sahil and you, Prasanna, both. But before that, Vardhan, quickly on uh, implementation bottlenecks. You know, as somebody who has made an attempt and a successful one at that to implement an AI tool internally, what do you think are the key bottlenecks that people should be aware of?
You're far too kind when you say success. What I can say is that, just in terms of hard facts, it took us about 9 months to even come up with something which worked and didn't crash. And, there are just so many things that can go wrong for something to kind of work. And we learned the hard way, just to come up with the bot, to train the bot, so one is, data. One of the most healthiest side effects of, and I think Varun and Sahil did mention it, healthiest side effects of AI, or the desire to implement AI, is that you need to get your data in order. So, like the fund, at least on the legal side, we had to do a complete cleanse. We know, for instance, what all we have, where were the gaps, what was. So as a result of implementing this tool, our general legal processes got more efficient and streamlined. So one is data. You need to have sufficient data, structured manner, so that your training of the tool is easy. And that was one of the biggest bottlenecks that we had in our implementation. Two is, access. Access in the sense, if it is an internal looking tool or an inside inward looking tool, that's quite easy. So long as you have good data, you are able to train it, you are able to do it. But let's say I want to get, answers which is Ramaya level on Companies Act, right? How do I get it? If I don't get access, I can't train my AI on, or my algorithm on that textbook, right? So that access is important. So there may be the technology, but if that access is not there, the solution is not there, right? Three is kind of, and since prompt engineering, and while Prasanna can get into the details, I think that's important, is how to ask the question, because that is important, right? Like for instance, we realized in our experience how the legal team was asking questions, and if you leave that tool with, let's say, my investment team, and how they were asking questions, there was a world of difference, right? And the outcome or the answer to that, those sentences were completely different, though we wanted the same information, right? So that I think is very important. And now fourth would be, I would say, you know capital and persistence. I mean, this is just, you have to have institutional buy-in, right? It is not easy. It is not easy to implement a tool. It is not easy to change behaviors, like Prasanna said, right? If you need, if you need to rethink from 0 to 1 what you do, how you do, right, to bring in efficiency, right, it really needs everybody's buy-in. If that is not there, and that everybody needs to change the way they function, if that is not there, it is not going to be a success, right? Fifth, I would say, is, kind of goes into the fourth one, is that, what we also realize, and this is our experience, it what many times happens, at least within organization, and if it's an internal tool, is that people who are not experts and otherwise used to working with each other end up working with each other. Think about the legal team and the data science team working together. I don't even know, like, I didn't know A of AI when I started working with them. Where my thinking stops, their thinking perhaps starts, in what's possible, what's not possible. How can legal, for instance, think of a solution if we don't know what's possible or what's not possible? We don't even know, right? Similar for them. How do they train the algorithm? How do they create the vectors and the prompts, right? How do they kind of divide? They called it de-chunking or chunking the document into different parts, right? How do they do that? How does the exit clause deal with event of default, etc.? Those kind of technicalities, and that needs to come together, right? So I think those are the kind of, just a flavor of the kind of obstacles, or rather opportunities, that you will face when you are looking to develop a solution for a business, for a business outcome. I would kind of say that
Or
this kind of.
go on.
No, go ahead.
No, how to select one. One is to develop one and to select what is out there,
Oh, that is,
right?
that by itself, like, so for instance, and I can draw a parallel. I was telling somebody else over a meeting that today, for instance, legal procurement, right? Like, I have been trained to, you can kind of figure out which law firm, which lawyer, for instance, is most suitable for which deal, right? But zero experience in technology. How can I, for instance, decide which technology is most stable, in the long run, has the maximum potential because of the fundamental rails on which it's been built, is scalable, etc., etc.? So that is a, and it's a time sink in itself, right? I mean, how much time do you allocate to choose the right tool? And there are so many tools. Literally, you do a contract lifecycle management tool search on Google. I mean, you would be surprised how many tools there are. And you decide one, and I don't know how many of us have negotiated these contracts with the service providers. Minimum 1 year, 2 year, advance of 6 months, etc. Right? So as a decision maker, that by itself is a massive kind of, you can see the miss set in when somebody tells me that you need to choose a tool to provide a solution for something. So it's not easy that.
In fact, Raj Nandini has added to what you have just said, Vardhan, saying in addition to what Vardhan mentioned, are we also looking at some level at predefined ways of asking questions to have the right responses, predictive inputs to get predictive and trained
So what
results,
we did,
right? Uh,
exactly. So what we did was, we we just prompted the question also. So there is, you just so it'll just come the top 10 questions that people ask in any document, and then we've sort of prompted the prompt engineering in a way.
Yeah, and that brings me to tool hallucination, Prasanna. Firstly, please just explain to non-techies like me on this webinar what is hallucination in this context, and
Sure.
how does one overcome it? Because one does require, like Vardhan also said, the need to have some human interface, and how does how should one visualize that part of it?
Sure. So I think on the one side, hallucination and creativity are two sides of the same coin, right? Because if you like it, we call it creativity. If you don't like it, we call it hallucination. So if you want AI to create stuff for us, then it is always going to come with creativity that could go into an area which you don't want. So that's one thing. On the other side, even as individuals, right, we all hallucinate all the time. Let's say we had to meditate and we had to literally sit quietly, close our eyes, and just count to 10. Right? Most of us wouldn't even get to three until some thoughts pop up, some imagination pops up, and lots of stuff pops up. Right? So compared to that, actually, LLMs and current AI is actually has a lot of concentration and is able to get to the right answer most of the time. But our data itself is complex. So let's say you're giving it some data, some Excel sheets. Some of those Excel sheets may have future projections. Some of those Excel sheets may have past data, right? So learning what is a future projection, which should not be used for training, and what is a past data, which should be used for training, is non-trivial, right? Or it could be drafts which were never used, and so on, right? So all of this stuff is not easy to do, right? But the way I think about it is, compared to 2 years ago, the amount of hallucination or creativity that documents have had has come down a lot. And today there is a slider that you can use on ChatGPT where you can say, "Hey, give me more creative answers or less creative answers." That is one side of it, right? Second is, LLMs are very good with words. They're not good with numbers. They're not good with directions. They're not good with that kind of stuff. So, on the other hand, software, old boring software, is very good with numbers, very good with maps, directions, those kind of things, and is not so good with words. So, what is going to happen is that in the future, software that you use or I use for any of these kind of things will not just be AI software, right? It'll actually be 80% boring old software which does math well, directions well. It's in control. It doesn't hallucinate. It is 100% clear one byte where this is to going to one byte somewhere else. It's 100% clear, right? Then there'll be 10 or 15% of AI which is black box, will be hallucinating far less. 2 years ago it was like a LKG kid. Today it's like a fourth standard kid. 2 years from now it will be like a 12th standard kid. 2 years from then it will be like a undergrad or a graduate level intelligence person. Plus you're going to have 5% or 10% of human intelligence there, right? But what is essentially going to happen is this side of the things, the AI and the software, will be infinitely scalable. So if you, Sanjay, could take on only a few cases or few customers, few clients, because you were limited by how much you could get done, imagine that this 10%, 20% AI and 70, 80% software is going to make you a Sanjay into 100, right? So that's kind of where things are leading. And you will say, hey, what about these edge cases? What about these edge cases? And every time it will be learning from you. And you will say, hey, for this document, do I need more creativity or do I need like really to be very precise? And maybe at different stages of the process, In the early stage of the process, maybe you want more creativity, but in the later stage of the process, you want all the tests to be conducted with like 0% creativity and 100% precision, right? So that kind of a thing is very soon going to be possible.
And and are there tools that are marrying the UX part of it with the underlying tech as well? For instance, I am working on a document. I am going into a meeting with, say, Varun. We are evaluating a deal, and Varun asks me a question on a particular law, and I can just quickly prompt Siri or whatever and say, "Could you please tell me what is it?" And I get an answer. Hopefully, more than 95% accurate, and
Absolutely.
at least I have some big picture. This thing, and while negotiating, while it could play out in various ways, right?
Yep. Yep.
How
Yeah, yeah,
how
absolutely. I
how
mean,
long
today Apple
how
has
long
launched,
before
I don't know,
some
the sorry,
yeah
the newest Apple
yeah
launch might get all you
yes
lawyers to switch to Apple. I don't know. But they built a secure
yeah
on device AI. And so
yeah.
all your documents never need to leave your device, and you can do that kind of an AI search on those documents in your device. So that's the kind
So
of,
that
and
answers
it can be
another
within the,
that answers Yeah.
go
No,
ahead.
sorry, within the ecosystem that you are in, it is within your safety
Yeah,
atmosphere. And that answers another
absolutely.
question that we were asked by, again, Raj Nandini, that everything is limited by the data set that you implement. Whatever data you're
Yes.
feeding in, your responses are as good. And if the data itself is limited, then the responses will not be so good overall. But how does that sort of work out? I am training whatever Apple has given me with my data set, which may be 100 documents, 150. Does the unless the software is learning from what I am feeding in, how does it become better overall for everyone else?
That's a great question, right? And I think few different answers are going to emerge. One is from a societal perspective. Let's not take law because I don't want to like scare everybody here. But let's take medicine. Would we be better off if a government trains at a government level AI to perform as good as the best doctors in the world and makes that available to everybody in some way, shape, or form? Is that better for society? Right? Is something to think about. And I think that way, then it's not locked into, this hospital has this data, or this lab has this data, or this research place has this data. Versus if you think about copyright, copyright or patents are granted for not for individual benefit, it's actually for society's benefit. We are granting you a temporary monopoly so that society can benefit, right? With AI, I feel that at least in some fields like medicine, there is going to be a strong case that for societal benefits, if it's a public AI, then should copyright or patents be like subsumed into building a public AI, right? So does it make sense to build a public AI which will actually have access to every document in medicine, say, so that it can be better rather than locking it up into one silo?
Yeah, and with that, I'll end this piece because lots of questions flowing in. I think we'll overshot time by 5 minutes. But yeah, maybe lazy fair, right, Prasanna? Because there could be two variations of the same software. One software that tells you that you have access to a version that everybody else has access to.
Yep.
Much like the stem cell that we keep these days in the bank.
Yes.
You have two options. One stem cell is available to everybody. One stem cell is available only to you. And if you want to have access to the broader software, which is learning from more people, you need
Exactly.
to make your document accessible to it. And
Exactly.
I guess interesting times. Let's see how soon we get
Absolutely.
that differential pricing and what sort of software. Many thanks to all our panelists, Prasanna, Sahil, Varun, Vardhan, from different time zones. I can see sun rising behind you. Sahil, thank you so much for this early morning call. I can see it's already past the workday in Singapore. Varun, thank you, Vardhan, thank you, Prasanna. One short 30-second survey. Prajay, can you please put it up on the screen? I would like to present it to all the viewers here just to quickly tell us what they thought of this webinar. And once again, final thank you from my side. If there are any follow-up questions, you want us to cover some other aspects that were not covered well in this particular webinar, please let us know and we'll have another round of it. Many thanks to all of you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sanjay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us on. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.